Hello everybody and welcome to day 67 of 100 days of code. We are absolutely flying through this and it's gone great. So let's just get stuck back in. So at the moment we have this cart and books, my favourite. We are adding books to a cart. Really have to make sure I carve the time to read the books. It's really enjoy it so much. Now I say that out loud, it seems so silly I cannot carve out some time to read a book. That's on my list next. Do you know what? I have a rule. I want to be in my bedroom for 9 o'clock and have an hour to just relax before I go to bed and read a book. And I end up scrambling in there at 9:45 or 10 past 10 or 10:15. And then I'm trying to go to sleep after looking at a screen all day. And it's just like, 9 o'clock. That's it. Reading a book. I love reading books. Oh my god, I need to give myself that joy back into my life. Books are the bomb. Anyway, so read a book if that's what you like to do, or go and do something you enjoy doing and create the time. It just made me realise, how can I be saying this? How can you not have time to read a book? That's ridiculous. I've all this time to do all this other stuff, which is equally as important as finding the joy of reading a book. So make time for your joyful things, guys. Very important. You know, it'll give you sustenance to do all the other things that you have to do when you take out that time to have a bit of joy. And for me, reading a book is a joy. So for you, it could be whatever you like to do. You know, I'm not going to start guessing here. Oh, you might want to do this or that. Anyway, so what we're doing is we want to send our get will be getting something back from the back end. We want to put something up onto this Firebase backend that's storing all of our cart information, our books, and we want to put up some information. So at the moment we have this my cart button, and we can add new, increase or decrement the amount of one item in the cart. So that's all working. But what we need to do is create a button to actually send this up to the backend. So that's what we're going to do now. And last time in yesterday's video, at the end of yesterday's video, because there was lots of waffling going on yesterday, I'm going to try and keep it to the point today. I just guess I like a waffle. But I explained what this notification.js is doing and sort of talked through it a little bit. So if you're interested in that, how we're conditionally going to show either an error class or a success class on a notification, whether or not our sending data to the database was successful or not, have a look at the end of yesterday, maybe 25 minutes from the end of the hour, or 45 minutes in, to say it in a more eloquent way, and you should be able to see me talking about this notification component, which is just going to give a notification on whether or not our addition to the backend was successful. So perfect. So what we're going to do now is build out this use effect a little bit. So what we want to do is, we cannot make use effect an asynchronous function because use effect returns a callback. So instead what we will do, didn't mean to do that. Instead what we will do is assign this fetch into its own new function within the use effect, and then that function can be made asynchronous. So we'll say const send cart data, and this is going to be an asynchronous function. So async. And in here we will just make it a regular old arrow function, and we will paste in our fetch. So this is gonna go in here, and then we want to await the response of the fetch. So when we're sending data to a backend, you know, we're waiting for that information to come back. So we're just taking care of all that now, and if something goes wrong in the process and we don't get back the data, we're handling that now. That's what we're setting up. So I'll just tab this in, keep everything, you know, bada bing bada boom, looking clean, and this is going to go down here. Just let's keep it all visually correct. So awesome. Okay, so that's our response. And then if something goes wrong here, so once we're outside of our async, we have our asynchronous function here sending the cart data. So then what we want to do is say if the response was not okay. So we're handling the case that this has failed here now. So if response dot okay, if it is not okay, because that's what this exclamation mark at the beginning means, if it is not okay, then we'll come in here and we'll just return. So we'll just get out of this function. We don't need to do anything else. Don't continue processing the data because we don't have any data. It failed. So then what we will do is say in the case that it is okay, so we'll create another constant here and say const response data is equal to await response dot JSON and bracket cool. So now what's going to happen is if something happens to this fetch and you know it can't fetch the data properly, we will get the response was not okay. So if the response is not okay, then just come out of this function. So therefore, if the response was okay, it will skip this block of code, it won't return out, and it'll come down here and it'll create a constant. And the constant will be named response data. And what that is we're awaiting the response.json. So once we have that response back and we have it, which is why we're waiting for it, we'll then convert it into a JSON format so we can use it down below in this format, which is how we want to use it. So that is great. Don't know why I'm moving my arms so much, but hey ho, let's go anyway. So perfect. Yeah. So now we know if we get past here that it was indeed successful. Actually, Max has done this slightly differently, which makes more sense. So rather than just return and just get out of this, which, you know, we do want to do that in one aspect or another, but there's a better way to, you know, send us out of this basically. So what we can do instead of just returning and not having anything to return out with, we can throw an error. So if we throw new error, we actually have something we can refer to then and use down below. So we'll say sending cart data error. Bada bing bada boom, baby. So perfect. So now we'll actually see this string in the case that something has gone wrong, and this will just return it out of this function anyway. And we won't come down here anyway. So it's just a different way of handling it, but we've got a bit more information being returned out as a result now. An error. Okay, so what we could do as well is, in order to switch on and off this notification, we could add a use state in here, but we already have our Redux state, managing state for us here. So seeing as we're using it in the same component, we can actually just set it up to handle a little bit more data and manage the state of the notification as well. So we can, you know whether or not we need to add this notification. So if we go back to our UI slice here, what our initial state is just that the cart is visible, and that's a false. So we'll also add notification, and we'll set it to null initially, and this should just be a small n, not a large one. So notification. And then we also want to add it into our reducers. So we'll do a comma, and first of all we have toggle, and then we'll also have another reducer function called show notification, which will switch on and off the notification. Cool. So perfecto selecto. How can Max just spell so eloquently and not have to spell words out like me sometimes? So we're going to pass in a state and an action. State and action causes a reaction. Literally does. So And this should be a function, obviously, because, well, maybe not obvious. Everything is obvious only when you know how. So we're learning, we're learning, we're learning. This is a reducer function that can be ran. That's also keeping track of the state of things. That's what a reducer function does. It takes in the state, or what a reducer function does is it takes in a certain amount of information and reduces it down to another piece of information. What the reducers do in Redux is take in a state and an action, and then you get a new state from that. So you pass in the current state, you pass in an action you want to perform, which is hooked up to a function that you tell it what to perform. What is the action? You actually define that as well, and then you get out a new state object, which is the updated state. So that's what we're doing here. That is what we are doing. So in here now we can set state.notification to a new object. And we want to have a key in here, so a status key, and the value of this key is going to be action.payload. So the action that's coming in from the payload.status. So we have a status attached to the payload. So we're just pulling that out. So in the payload, when we've sent something to the server, we'll get the status, which is like, what did he just say? He said pending, error and success. So that'll tell us whether it's pending, error or success, our request that we've sent. So we can pull out that information and we can do something with it now. So great. And we also have a title, which we also get from the action payload. So I'm going to move this down, move it down, move it down. You know, list it out, list it out, list it out. So we'll have a status, a title, and this is going to be action dot payload dot title. Perfect. And do we need anything else? And a message. Okay, so we also need a message, and our message, which makes sense, yes. So these are all going to come back with that fetch. This is the information that comes back in the payload. So we'll have action.payload.message, and if it's a success, it'll probably just say like success, you know, but then that would also be the status. So maybe there's a bit more information in there. So message.message. Perfect. Cool. Oh, my coffee. It's as cold as a winter's day. No, I'm only joking. It's just a bit chilly. It's not even that cold. There's no heat left anyway. It's the same temperature as the room. So maybe not a winter's day, but a autumnal day. So then, now that we have this, we're also going to use dispatch in our app.js in order to dispatch these functions we've created, these dispatch functions. So we just pull that in from React Redux, because this is all being used with Redux. So we use dispatch, which just allows us to dispatch those actions, as I said, yes, yes. And then we want to import our actions in order to be able to dispatch them. So we will import UI actions. I don't know where that came from, guys. Oh Lord. So UI actions, and I really want to stop using that word so frivolously, because anyway, look, improvements to be made. We just do our best, you know, we do our best with what we have, and we focus on changing and improving, not even changing, just what makes us feel good every day. And that's all we need to worry about. If we do that, we will be flying high, guys. So just, you know, consciousness, be conscious of what you're doing. And if you don't like something, just knowing that, oh, I don't like that, that's enough, because eventually you'll start to find ways to replace and do something that you like a bit more. So No worries, all good. We all have to learn, we all have to grow. That's the end of it. So in our use effect here now, when we're sending our cart data, we can dispatch this action. So now we can dispatch. So we just want to dispatch. We just use the keyword dispatch to dispatch. Dispatch. No. Don't do that on me now. I just want to dispatch. So felt Elvis coming through there. Don't ask me what that was either, but I was getting the like vibes. I don't know whether you even picked up on that, but now. So we will dispatch UI actions and our show notification function, which is one of our dispatch functions. So now we want to use it. We want to actually dispatch it, that reducer. So show a reducer function. Sorry, not a dispatch function. We are dispatching our reducer. So we run the parentheses to say run this function, and then we're going to pass it in an object. And what we want to say is if status is pending, so this is in the case that it is still going, and we're passing in the status of pending. So these are not coming back from our fetch, or are they? Let's wait and see. So here we're defining status as pending. That should just be pending, and it should be in a string. So here we're assigning the property status to the word pending. Pending is what we're assigning to status, key value pair, and therefore when we're sending the cart data, first thing we're going to do is set the status to pending. So it's in the middle of doing something, so we are defining that ourselves here. Oh, so we're just defining these ourselves. Okay, and then we have title. So we're just defining those different properties that we set up over in our reducer function. So our title is going to be sending ... So we're currently sending something. We'll close off our parentheses, and then we have message, and this can be sending cart data ! Exclamation, exclamation, exclamation. So cool. Perfect. And then we'll move this down around the town. We don't want to get confused. Don't want to have the blues. So we'll move this in. I'll move this down. Perfect. Looking good, looking good. Keep everything in alignment. Keep it looking fresh, you know. And this, why is that? Oh yeah, because this should be down here. We're still doing something in there. Perfect. So now, yes. So now once we're finished, we also want to dispatch the show notification function to say that we're finished. So we're going to run another dispatch when we are done, to let everything know we're done. Okay, so Max said we don't even need to await for this response.json, because if we just dispatch knowing that if we have an error, that's enough, excuse me, to know that something has failed. So that's all good. And then once we dispatch our other actions, we can tell it what to do. So we don't actually need this line for now. What we'll do instead is change our status to success, change the error message. Bada bing, bada boom, baby. Yeah, so this also hooks up to the notification component, which I spoke about in the last 25 minutes of yesterday's video. Maybe even the last 10 minutes. I wasn't going to last 10 minutes, I'd say. So yeah, so here is our success and here is our error, and they're getting passed in with the props. See, props.status is error, props.status is success. So that's all hooking up to this reducer function that we're creating, which is going to then tell it how to apply the CSS classes. So it's all coming full circle. It's all linking together. We're making sense here. We're doing all right on the night or today. So, so back in our app.js, we have our title. Our title is going to be success. exclamation. Oh, it's a big success. We're excited about it. So exclamation, and then we will say cart data successfully sent. Cart data successfully sent. All right. Cart data successfully sent. And if I am not spelling it right, oh well, it's just a string. So that's all right. I think it is right. It is. So you just need 2 of everything in successfully, guys. 2 C's, 2 S's, 2 L's. So I think sometimes I leave out an S or I leave out a C. Probably the C. So 2, 2, 2. We've got double trouble bubble going on when we are successful. You're doubly excited. Now hopefully I won't forget that again. Just double it up. Successful. When you're successful, you're doubling your profits, you're doubling your gains, you're doubling everything. Success! No, I'm only messing. So, cool. Okay, cool. So now we have defined this sendCart data function, which is an asynchronous function, which is going to come through. It's going to dispatch our show notification and set that to pending. So we're pending at the moment, and we can show this message then if the status equals pending. We can say we're sending the cart data, because it currently says card. So that's what the first thing that happens. Then we come in and we actually await our fetch. We run our fetch, which is putting something onto the database, so we can get a yes or a no. Did it go? Did it not go? Go, no, go. What happened? Tell me. And we can handle both of those things. So if it did not go, if the response was not okay, we throw an error. That'll eject us out of this function. We've returned out. We have our error. That's what we leave this function with. In the case that it is okay, it skips this code. It just ignores this. It comes down here and we dispatch. It was a success, because if it wasn't not okay, then it must have been okay. So we come down here and we have success, title, success. Our cart data was successfully sent. And now we need to actually run that function. So now what we can do is say send bada bing, bada boom, in the wrong place. Look at you. So I'll just put this back up. We need to add a semicolon here. It'll work with or without it, but we'll add it in for reading best visual practices. So now we're going to call that function, the function that's doing all this stuff, our sendCart data asynchronous function. So we're going to call it down here. So we just write the name and the parentheses. That's how you call a function. And what we'll do after is we will catch any errors. So let's have a look. You know me, guys, don't be afraid to stretch, especially not sitting at a computer. You know, come on, stretch with me. I'm just watching the video. I'll explain when I'm not, when something else is happening. So have a little stretch. Give your wrists a roll, give your head a roll, whatever feels good for you. You know, sitting down all day, it's muy importante, mis amigos. So great. So now we have our sendCart data. What we're going to do is catch, and what we're going to catch is that error. So if an error was thrown, we want to catch it. Gotta catch them all. Errors. No. So we'll catch the error, and then we will used to love Pokemon. Oh my god, me and my brother were like insane. But anyway, so I'll open up the parentheses here, and then we will dispatch. So we want to dispatch something else, so we're going to tell it again, in the case that we've caught an error, we want to dispatch another action, and the action, can you guess which one we're going to dispatch this time? It's going to be error. So we're just hooking all this up here. This is how we use this state management with Redux. It's actually looking really useful, handy. I'm liking it. So this time it's going to be error, and then the title will be error. And then we also want sending cart data failed. Sending the data was a failure, my dear. Sending cart data failed. So cool. Just it didn't go well. Look, failing. You can't fail. Well, in this instance, you can. So we'll continue on. I mean, in life, you know. If you've tried, you've tried. You know, you can't fail. You've just learned a lesson. So I know that's easier said than done, and believing. It's many times I thought, oh, I've failed. But as I get older, I realise everything has had a value. And, you know, there is no failing. Without falling over sometimes, you just don't know how to get back up. So that is the value of doing something wrong and failing. You can't fail. So now what we want is we have our card. Oh, look, we didn't even say we wanted to use dispatch. So here we just have dispatch, but we're not actually using it. I have Max talking pretty quick 2 times. Maybe I should slow him down because I miss this. So we need to actually, dispatch cannot just be used like that. We need to assign that. This dispatch is a very well named variable, so it fooled me into just like, oh yeah, that makes sense, and going ahead and using it. But this should actually be assigned to the use dispatch hook, which is hooking up all of that functionality. So we can see we did import use dispatch, but we're not actually using it, and here we're just using the word dispatch randomly. We haven't hooked it up to anything. So we need to say what this dispatch is, and what it is use dispatch. So now we have all that functionality that we can dispatch these functions, and that was very necessary. We would have had errors and could have been scratching the old bean, wondering what was going on there. So we'll create another constant down here as well. Const. Hey, yeah, mamma mia, where's my fingers? So const, and this will be notification. I really hope my terrible accents are just a bit of crack for people. Like, if you're from these places, I apologise. And just like realise that I'm terrible at accents. And that's really the end of it. Like that's it really. So then we have state.ui.notification. Perfect. And I'll just close this off here now with another semicolon. So perfect. And we will continue. Auto completion screwed me here. Max has left a note. Auto completion screwed me here. Love it. Absolutely love it. I actually love that. So anyway, so this should be use selector, not use state. Yes, of course, we're not using okay, so he's going to fix it later anyway, but he's just called it out because it's incorrect. So we're not using state, we're using use selector. So use selector, and now we want to pass in this state. And okay, so this bit was still the same because I was like, what's going on? State.ui.notification. Perfect. And then perfect. So cool. So now if we go and have a look at our UI slice, we have a notification. The notification is initially set to nada, null, not 0. Probably shouldn't have done 0. It's set to null, which is its own entity, its own thing in JavaScript. You know, it has its own. It's null. That's what it is. It's null, which isn't a value. It's of the value null. Anyway, moving on. So it's set to null, and then once we come down here and we run the show notification reducer function where we pass in a state and an action, what we're going to get back, or the format of that state notification of the notification, what we're actually using here is we've created this notification object that's stored in the state, and this is the format of it. It has a status, a title, and a message. So that's what's going on. Okay, cool. So, so then in our app.js, we can actually use this notification. So I'm just going to stick my head out the window for a minute and do the thing that I told you guys about for your eyes, because my eyes are feeling a bit tired, and so is my body, because I've been at the computer for like all morning. Actually, I didn't just come on and start doing 100 days. I was doing other things beforehand. So pop your head out the window, look at something. What I do is I look at something in my back garden for 20 seconds, then I look at something on the next house for 20 seconds, and then I look at the furthest object I can for 20 seconds, and it just allows your eyes to realign, refocus. Very good if you're sitting at a computer all day. It just gives your eyes that little bit of break, and you'll actually see as soon as I stick my head out the window now, because I just have a window here. I'm in the attic space. I'm up in an attic, very small little office room is where I do all of my studying. This is my office. This is where I do the videos. It's where I do everything. Not that you need to know about like my whole life, but there you go. I'm a sharer. So anything you do want to know, ask, you know, I'll fill you in. So basically, if I stick my head out the window now and look at the furthest point away, like it actually takes a moment. Like your eyes will be so blurry, so you do really see the value of incrementally giving your eyes a break and taking this time. So I'm going to do that now, and you don't need to see me hanging out of a window, so I'm going to pause the video. I've explained what I'm going to be doing while I hang out of the window, so that should be enough, hopefully, guys. Okay, so now here in our app.js, yes, we can actually use this notification. So we'll pull it in, we'll say import notification. Yep, from components UI notification, and we'll just move this up to within all of our component imports just to keep it all together. Then we have our UI actions. This can go underneath all of our object imports. Just keep it looking a bit, you know, we've got something going on here. And then actually I'll put my React imports at the top, and then I'll have my React Redux imports. We're not using is pending, but I'm going to leave it there for a minute because maybe we're going to use it in a moment. I don't know why it's there, but we can remove it after. So down here now we're going to use a fragment, which again will need to be added to that import array up at the top for React. So if we just click here, well, no, what I want to do is actually move this down. Let's see what that's going to do if I use that autocomplete wrap in JSX fragment. Okay, no. Yeah, no. So I don't want to do that. Although we literally could just do that instead. It's the same thing. So that's still a fragment. So that's all I was going to do. We can just wrap it in a fragment, as in an empty fragment tag like that. We need to have a parent div. It can be an empty div, just a little fragment like that. Or we can give it the name fragment, because this is given to us in React in order to make sure that we can just wrap things like this without adding a div, which goes into the DOM and stuff like that. So it's just a wrapping tag, because we need to have a top level tag in a JSX code when we're turning it out. So then in here what we want to do is add this notification. So we'll add another JSX expression here to compute something first, and what we want it to compute is if notification. So if notification is true, then we want to show our notification tag. So perfect, like that, yeah. And then we'll set the status to notification.status. So status is equal to notification.status. And we also need the title, and we need the message. So we'll set the title to notification.title. So these are the props that we're expecting to be passed in when we use the notification. That's how we set it up. So this will be notification.title, and then we have one more, our message, which is our notification.message, which is getting populated in this component here. So it will send the various message, notification and title dependent on what it's been set to, dependent on at which part of the code we're at, whether or not it's pending, whether or not it's complete, or whether or not we have an error. So that's what will be shown now. So this is .message. So perfect. That's dynamically going to change that for us now, because that's how we've set it up, because it's going to change dependent on the status, dependent on what's going on. Okay. Okay, so we've got an error line 35. Feeling alive. What's going on? So response is not defined. Right, okay. So what's coming back from this then? We need to like equal this to response. So const response equals await the fetch. And now we should have that response. And that should be all that's missing. Oakley dokley. And now, how did Max go and send this here? Yeah. Cool. Okay, so when we save, like how is he sending things? That's what I want to know. How do we actually send it? Okay, let's just continue on and see. So what's happening in Max's code is that when he reloads the page, because this is set, oh, bada bing, bada boom. Did you see that flash? Oh, we got a flash, we got a flash, we got a flasheroo, ooh, ooh, ooh. So great, we have a flash there. So something is happening. It is showing this notification, but we want it to show only in the case that's, we don't want to just use effect and run it when we first load up the page. We want to check if, first of all, is the page on its initial load, and if so, don't use it then, because then it'll just reset the cart to empty every time the page loads again. So we'll set is initial, and we'll set this to a boolean, and we're going to set it as true initially, because yes, on the first time it will be true. And we define it outside of our component function, so it doesn't interfere with, so it's not being set in here, you know, because then it would, the page would load, it would start use effect, then it would set it to true. So we need to set it to true before we even come into that function. And when he says that function, he does not mean the use effect function, he means our entire app function. So this should be out here. Like this, okay. Then okay, so before we send our cart data down here, before we run send cart data, so we can still define everything, that's okay, but what we'll do is check is initial, if is initial, and if it is initial, then we just want to return. We don't want to send that cart data yet, so we'll just return. Cool. And now we shouldn't see that flash, so if I now it's just there the whole time. Okay, perfect, there we go. Cool. So now we don't see anything happening. So if I remove this again, if we leave it for a while, it actually, first of all, it's pending, and then it's a success. So that's brilliant. So yeah, first of all, and that's just because the cart data is sent, and on the first run through, it's just setting the cart to nothing. So what we actually want to do is make this action happen only on a rerun, you know. So when we first start, we just want to load the page. We don't need to be sending anything. So before we send the cart data, we'll first check if it's the initial load, and then we'll just return out. Perfect. So we don't continue. And we'll also set is initial to false in here, because then once we've ran it once, it will set is initial to false. So is initial equals false. So now once this component is rendered once, is initial will be false, and then we will return out, and in is initial will always be false then following on. So let's reload, because this is just picking up intermediate code changes that we did. So perfecto selecto, page has been loaded once. Let's do something. Grand. So it's sending it there now on this page load, but we need to hook this up to a button, because it making no sense. So okay. So we just gotta keep going anyway, it doesn't matter what's going on in the outside world. I've got work to do, so we'll keep continuing here. Cool. So now, yes, if we add something to our cart, we should get the pending state and then the success state. But surely, there we go. Surely we still want to like do this not every time we add something to the cart, or do we? That's the action that's happening anyway, so we'll stay tuned and we will and we'll see what happens here. I would have thought that we wanted to do this when we had everything in the cart already. And yeah, let's test the error state. So if we remove .json, which was the problem I faced the first time around in this, and it took me the whole lecture to figure out what was wrong, and it was literally just the .json was missing. So very small things can cause errors and you won't do them again. That's what I'd say. So there we go. Look, it cannot interact with the back end, and we get our error state instead. So that's perfect. That's looking good. We'll put this back to the correct configuration, so we're not messing about here. And I'll just play the video again. Okay, yeah. Yeah, so for the moment, we're only sending this data to the cart. So if we reload, or sending the data to Firebase, so if we reload, our cart goes back to empty because we don't get the data back in order to populate our cart again. So we need to implement that so that our cart memory, so we keep the store of our cart. So we'll set that up now. Oakley dokely. So okay. Yeah, so what we did in order to update the what we did in order to update the state using Redux. So when we're using Redux, in order to update the state, you don't go and alter the state directly, and you don't do it in you know, in your components. What you do is you use these dispatches. You dispatch the reducer functions that are used in the Redux. Use slice. So where you're creating your Redux slice here, you create your functions and then you run them functions in order to update the cart. So you can run them functions inside the components, but there is another way, which is what we've just seen. We used these functions within our components in order to update our state. But we can also use an action creator. So let's have a look at how to do it with an action creator now. So we haven't done that yet at all in the 100 days, so we're going to have a look now. Okay, so we just have some information here. So we're going to use a thunk. We're going to use a thunk. Okay, so a thunk is just a function that delays an action until later, until something else is finished. So we can use a thunk or a delayed action function in order to do this. Okay, so we can use a thunk to write an action creator function that doesn't return the action itself, but returns another function which then returns the action. So that's what we are at. So before we actually dispatch the action, we can run some other code. And it's easy to implement. It sounds a bit cryptic, but it's easy to implement. Okay, cool. So what we're going to do is we have this code in here. So when we're sending the cart data, we are setting our dispatch and stuff like that, and we can move this out of this current component, so therefore into its own function. We'll be calling that function, and I think that's what we're doing right now. So let's just watch and follow along and see how this all works. So we'll go to our cart slice to create our own action creator. We come down here to the bottom. So after the slice, outside of the slice, this is all the slice here. So we'll come down here and we'll create another constant called send cart. Send cart data, and this is going to be equal to cart slice dot actions, and then just above here we want to const send cart data, const send cart data is equal to cart data, and then we have an arrow. We're going to open up our function here, and what we want to do is return an object, return. So what we will return is the type of nada, type of nothing, and comma, we have a payload as well. So payload is going to be ... Perfect. Then we will just close off our object here. Perfect. So okay, so then we also want to export the actions. No, we have that. Send cart data. So we do not need this anymore because our send cart data is now a function. Where am I going? Yes, so I don't need this send cart data defined because we have a function that's sending the cart data. So I'll save and So rather than returning a type and a payload, what we want to actually return is another function here. So that's what we're going to return. So we're going to return an arrow function. Yes. Okay, okay, okay. And so what this function will receive as an argument is the dispatch function. And then in here, we're going to dispatch the actual action that we want to perform. So we'll say dispatch and add some brackets. So now in our app.js, we can grab this dispatch function that we were currently doing over here. We'll take this out, so I'll just copy it for the time being, come back to my card slice, and then we can dispatch this instead. So we don't actually want this whole thing, we just want what is inside, because we already have dispatch road here. So then we'll paste that in here, and now we need to get access to our UI actions. So do we have UI actions being imported here? We do not, so we will import UI actions from UI slice. Perfect. And now we can grab them down in our dispatch down here. Okay. Okay, cool. And then we can also copy all of the code that we handle our response as well in this case. So I'll actually get rid of this dispatch now, which probably we'll just get rid of our dispatch, and I'm going to cut all this. So what to do when we handle this function. So we'll cut all this and move this over as well. So now after we've dispatched our pending state, which ends here, this is the end of the dispatch, what we want to do is handle it then. So there we go. We're doing exactly what we were doing in the other file, only we're doing it here. So here we're using await. So in order to have await, we need to have an asynchronous function. So we'll do that. So async on the dispatch. Cool. So here we have the cart being used, but we're passing in the cart data, so we will just align them up. So what we actually want to stringify is the cart that's coming in. So it's the cart. And now in our app.js, we'll grab the other code. So we're going to move all of the dispatch stuff over. So we can see that this, like we can collapse this, is the two yellow brackets here. So we're just going to grab this second dispatch. So in the case that we're not sending, then we want to continue on and do the dispatch. So after this, if, yeah, here, we have another dispatch. And we're also going to just handle the errors. So up here, after our first dispatch, we're going to create another constant called send request. And this will be equal to async. Open up our parentheses. This is just going to be an asynchronous arrow function, like so. And we're going to put the code, yes, for sending the response and then handling the response in here. Okay, yeah. And if I save, will that format for me? No. So I'll just move this back, because that should not be there. It should be there. Okay. So send request is an asynchronous function, and then we just want to await the response. So we will await send request. Okay, so we want to await that response. Yes. Yes. And if we do it like this, then we can try and catch errors. So we'll try to await the send request, and then in the case that something is wrong, we can catch the error. So cool. So like this. So catch, we'll pass in error because we want to catch the error. Not like that. So catch, mamma mia. Let's just go back because something's going on here. So error needs to go in here. Catch error, open up our parentheses. And then, is this a rogue? Parentheses, it looks like it. So then in here, okay. Whoa, this is getting crazy. Well, not really. So I'm just checking everything is okay, because it's a lot of moving code. So we're going to await send request. Yes. Yeah. And now we can try and catch that send request. Okay. And then dispatch our error. So we want to dispatch that success. Okay. And he has this above here. So if we have an error, tell us about it. Throw the error. Then try and catch, and if we catch the error, then we want to dispatch the error code. So what we would do if we have an error, that's the code we want to dispatch. So that makes sense. That goes in here. In the case we have an error, dispatch the different things that we've configured for in the case of an error. Yeah. Yes. And then the success is dispatched in the try block if we are successful, which also makes sense because, okay, so we cut this for the success, and in the case that things all go well and we have the send request coming back, no errors, then we can dispatch the successful. Yes, and we're missing a closing parentheses. This is getting insane. So here we're missing a closing parentheses. So that means you must have a rogue parenthesis down below. Yeah. So we'll get rid of that. Cool. Yeah, big rogue, yeah. And then, okay, let's keep watching. So then if we come into the catch block, yes, then we want to catch the error and dispatch the error action. That actually makes a lot of sense. Okay. So what's going on here is we've created another function called send cart data, which is taking in the cart. And this straight away is creating an asynchronous function, which we don't yet know who's going to run this function. You know, we've just created a function, and then straight away we dispatch the pending status. So straight away we're pending. Then we create a new function, which is to send the request. So this is another nested function because it's nested inside the send cart data function. It's another asynchronous function, and this is what's going to send the request for us. This function is then called by us, but it's called inside a try catch block, so we can catch any errors. If there are some errors, we can catch them. All the while we still have the pending status up above, so that's all good. If it comes back successful, then we get a success dispatch. And in the case that there's an error, we catch the error, and then we dispatch the error function from our state management component with Redux. Yeah. Okay. So now what we want to do is back in our app.js, we'll just clean up this code, this use effect, because we don't need this now. We've moved all that into an action, into our own action function that's doing this for us. So it looks like I'm missing a bracket somewhere. Yeah, am I? What am I missing there? Or can it just not be empty? So blue. Oh, we're missing another pink. No, blue. We've opened up our so that's there. Then we have this. So we're missing a yes, okay. Cool, right. So you just match it up, guys, you know. So start from the middle. So I could see I had the yellow and the yellow. You can even collapse this if that makes it a bit easier for you. Then we have a blue here. So that was the one we were missing actually, because then I realized, right, well, I don't have that because these two are closing themselves. So there's an open and a close. There always has to be an open and a close. And then we have a pink closing parentheses, but we were missing our intermediate blue closing curly bracket. So that's just how you follow that back up, you know, because we had a squiggly line, we had an error. So now what we will do is in our use effect, we will keep the isInitial code because this is good. It tells us when we are initially loading. So we'll just set that in here. So we'll say if isInitial. Okay, guys, we've hit the hour and I actually have places to be, things to do. So I might have to call it a day today, baby. I really don't want to leave it in such a middle ground area there, but it's not. All we're going to do, we've set up our action that we can dispatch now in our UI cart slice. So this is our action, which is an action function, which is a function that's calling another function, whatever name I gave that earlier, a thunk. So we have our thunk function, which is a function that calls another function, which is exactly what's going on in here. And this is all defined now. And now all we need to do is actually call this function and use it. So that's what we're going to do next time. Thank you so much for joining me. Send in love, send in hugs, send in good vibes. Have a great day. Thank you so much for joining me, and shing. Yeah, that's it really. Thanks, guys. Bye.